Welcome! In this video we'll be taking a look at Rachel, a legendary grade tank class Elune. Starting off looking at her 6-star level 60 stats, she starts off at a 38.9 KHP, which is very nice, an attack of 3.6, and magic and physical defenses at 5.1 and 5k. Her attack speed at 105 makes her at the lower end of the mid-range, which is not bad. As she is transcended up to the max at +5, her HP goes up to a very nice 70,000, with her attack being at a low 6.5k, which is expected as a tank, and her physical and magic defenses going up to a very solid 9.2 and 9.1k. Moving to her skills, her skill 1, crossbow shot. This one is a single target frontline only hit that deals physical damage equal to 70 plus 90% of her attack stat. As this skill is leveled up to +6, it goes up to a 630 plus 123% of her attack as physical damage. As her attack is very low, which is typical for most tanks, this skill will not be doing much and just provides a little bit of a fluff damage. Moving to her special skill, Deploy Pavis, this skill puts her into a channeling state for 2 turns. During this channeling state, it reduces the damage received by 10% and distributes single target damage dealt to any ally in her row evenly among all allies. When the channeling of this skill ends, it fires her crossbow at the target that you selected when the channeling started, dealing 140 plus 210% of attack as physical damage. As the multiplier is pretty nice, the end damage is still low because her attack is low base. Putting this skill up to the max, it starts to reduce the damage by up to 20% instead of 10%, making it better, and increases the damage that it does up to 1400 plus 282% of her physical attack. This makes the skill have potential to do good damage, but again, with her low base attack, isn't going to be too high to begin with. This also goes to a 3-turn channeling, which means that it lasts longer when you level it up. Instead of reducing the time, it lasts longer. But because it lasts longer, this also means that the distribution of damage to everybody is reduced. Now this is only her allies in her row, front or back row, whichever you put her in. What this does, this means that while she is in this channeling state and an enemy targets an ally on her row, that damage will be distributed between everybody in the row, meaning that if she is on a row with a total of 4 of your allies, including herself, and one of those allies is attacked with a skill that would normally deal, for example, 10,000 damage, that 10,000 damage is distributed between all 4, dealing each one 2.5k. However, if the attack is an AoE attack hitting everybody, then everybody takes just the normal damage that they would receive with no consideration to this at all. So using her against heavy or high AoE damage dealers, this skill will not do much other than just reducing the damage that she takes, and that's about it, as everybody else, including herself, will take the same amount of damage as it's an AoE attack. Going to her ultimate skill, this skill is a single target anybody attack that deals 160 plus 230% of her attack as physical damage. It deals an additional damage equal to 20% of their existing HP. This amount of additional damage inflicted will not exceed 200% of her attack. So the more that her attack is, the more that the damage of this skill can potentially do. As the skill level goes up to +6, the skill goes up to a 1300 plus 308% of her attack as physical damage and deals up to 30% of the enemy's existing HP. Again, it will not do more than 200% of her attack. This means that the skill can do good damage against bosses, as the skill is based on existing HP. As the boss gets lower in HP, the skill will do less and less damage. Also, you would need to have her on high attack to make sure that it's doing the maximum amount of damage that you can. Since she does have damaging skills for all three, going with an attack build is not a bad option. Her first passive reduces damage received by 20% for all allies in her row except for herself, which is why using the special skill then reduces her damage taken as well, meaning that everybody in her row has reduced damage as well as a shared damage buff. Her passive 2, this one, deals 100 plus 100% of her physical damage as additional damage with each attack. This is something that she has, so it's just a way for her to deal more damage based on her physical defense. So the higher physical defense that you have, the more damage she will do. Her third passive, this one, is when she's attacked by an enemy, it returns 20% of the damage back to the enemy and also makes it so that her attacks do not miss, which means if they have a high evasion tank or an evasion enemy, she will still not miss on them. She is very good in that respect for dealing with some enemy Elunes such as Mikazuki, as Mikazuki does have additional evasion depending on the buffs or status of the person attacking her. This means that she will always attack and land those hits on her. This also works for certain evasion tanks like I think his name is Bike Wanjo. Anyway, he also is an evasion tank and it gets high evasion, so she can deal damage to him too. Moving to her skill gems, her skill 1, the recommended is physical, and crit, which is pretty typical, giving her a 5% chance of reducing the target's physical defense by 10% for 2 turns. As this skill is a pretty useless skill that only does physical damage, going with this to have the extra 5% chance of reduction can be good, but if you build her for a damage build, again, the base one here is good, or you can go with a more physical type attack stats, or you can go with more crit rate. Her special skill, which is yellow violent, has a 5% chance of increasing her magic defense by 10% for 2 turns. This is pretty insignificant, even considering that one of her passives deals damage based on physical defense, having the increased magic defense by only 10%, and a 5% chance of doing that is pretty low, so going full yellow is usually better, even though she does gain the speed out of it if you go with violent. Her ultimate skill gives a 10% chance to stun for 1 turn. As it's a low chance, it's really up to you if you want to do it or not, but the recommended is physical crit, and is not bad as this skill does do good damage. Going with these options isn't bad, and the additional chance to stun can't hurt. When you look at her dimension slate, you have a lot of options for her depending on how you want to build her. You can either build her to be as a high tank, which means you would want to focus on your physical, especially on her, with some magic defense and HP. The other thing that you could potentially do with her is build her as a hybrid, meaning that you would also want attack and some crit on her as well to do more damage. If you want to build her full attack, then you would want to focus on the attack and crit stats more than HP, physical, and magic defense. As she does have passive, as she does have a skill 2 that reduces the damage that she takes, you don't need to focus much on physical and magic defense if you want to use her that way. That way you can just use her as a damage dealer and have high attack and crit rate on her with crit power to do a significant amount of damage. Her skills do allow her to do this. The gear sets on here are very are varied for her as they can be depending on what you want her to do. If you want to build her as a damage dealer, then you would want to go with more damage dealing type sets on her, and you can even go with the offhand attack weapon to give her more attack so that her skills do more damage. As her base HP is not too bad but not too high, the extra attack here can be a viable option while still maintaining her tankiness. Physical defense for both of these would be good, and try to get some magic defense made up for it on the substats, or go with physical 1 magic on the other and then try to get more physical damage or physical defense on the substats, as she does have a passive that deals additional damage to the targets based on her physical defense. It is a nice bonus to her damage. Many gear sets can be used on her to help reduce the damage that she takes. Again, the Forgotten Hero set, which reduces damage taken if a buff is active, is good if you can keep her buffed and you have something like a Wei to make sure that she always has a buff. This reduces the damage that she takes greatly, along with the Wei giving her an attack buff to do even more damage with her attack skills. This way you can use her as a tank and as an attacker at the same time. She is a pretty varied unit, and she does not necessarily need too much accuracy for her skills, as they're just mostly damage dealing skills with very little in terms of debuffs, if anything at all. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know below.